be careful what you wish for, and I say this as someone who is not new to spirituality.
Today, when people speak of binding spells, the first thing that comes to mind is two people living happily ever after. That is definitely possible. But if you bind yourself to the wrong person, you will have a tragedy on your hand. It is always good to get to know someone before you do a binding spell on that individual, because you don't want things to pop up unexpectedly. A binding spell is like glue. When you bind yourself to someone, it's very difficult for you to separate from that person. And it is very difficult for the person you're binding to leave you. First thing you should know about binding spells is that it creates a boundary around you and your target. Neither one can go too far without experiencing tragedy. It can be accidents, it can be illness. If you're from the South, you've probably heard of this, where an individual drifted off too far, or you've heard of people who've been binded to someone, and when they wander off too far, they end up getting sick. When you have a binding spell on someone who is abusive, the binding spell does not curb the abuse. If anything, the binding spell makes things more exaggerated. When you have someone who already has a hot temper, these people become very emotional when you do this work on them. These people begin to crave a lot of attention. And when you cannot give them the attention that they need, they lash out like a child. They throw a violent temper tantrum. This is why most people who do love spells, they find themselves in situations at times where the person tries to beat them. When you put this type of energy on a person who is an abusive individual to begin with, they're going to have all types of irrational thoughts in their mind. Whether you're cheating, it could be 3 o'clock in the morning, you're in your bed, and because you don't answer the phone, they think you're sleeping with someone. So what does that do? It amplifies their anger. It gives them an unjustifiable reasoning as to why you're not picking up the phone 3 o'clock in the morning. When you put a binding spell on yourself and an individual, the roles change. One moment you're over emotional, the next moment that person's over emotional. And when this emotion is not catered to, the person feels as if that person is taking advantage of them. Or they may feel as though that person who they feel this affection and love for is not into them. Because when the emotion comes over them, they're looking for that same reciprocation.
Back in October 2022, I met my child's father. I decided that this was a great relationship as he had a career, car, money, and so did I. I finally felt like I met someone on my level. Late into the pregnancy, he started to change, wasn't really coming home, picking up the phone. So I had been scrolling and I had seen Leonard's page. And I let it sit for a couple months until I, gathered the money in order to do the work. I reached out to Leonard. He was amazing, quick. I seen results immediately. Not results, but I seen movement immediately. But I also seen that he was becoming more jealous, more aggressive, more abusive, lying more. And Leonard always told me that if you start to see bad things happen to him, it's because he's not being compliant with the work that we're doing. So a lot of bad things started to happen to him. And eventually, one of the neighbors called the police and he was arrested. Fast forward, 7 months go by. I'm dealing with the situation. We go to court. He kind of bought his way back into my life, and we have a child, so I thought that there was a change. No, there was not. 2 weeks later into that, he started abusing me again, and the abuse was like, it went from a level 1 to like a level 10,000. It was strangulation, it was beating, it was punching, scratching. He threw me out of a moving truck, it broke my bones, and this is all within the last 7 months. Spirit really attacked him. He went from having almost $1 million to $0. He became addicted to trans escorts, drugs. Recently, he had to get a gallbladder surgery to have it removed. And then after that, it still didn't work. We couldn't even figure out what was wrong with him because he was fighting against the work so much that we could not figure out what was wrong in his body. So they just chalked it up to liver failure. After that, I've just been really done with the relationship because the abuse, even though he was sick or had gotten sick, it just kept getting worse. So I tried to leave a few times within the last month. Every time he has caught me. And recently I tried to leave last night and he kidnapped my baby. So I have to have a restraining order filed. And I'm leaving the state. I have to pack up my kids. I say all of this to say, be careful what you ask for. Stop trying to bind men who are not worth it. I already seen that he was not worth it, and I decided to bind him. Lastly, never blame your spiritualist. Leonard has gone above and beyond, and he executed exactly how he was supposed to. The only issue was the target was stubborn, and I was trying to bind somebody to my life that did not want to be there.